Amanda Harris had been waiting for this moment her entire life, though she never truly believed it would come. The observation deck of Station 7 was her favorite place to think, and tonight she needed to think clearly. The massive alien vessel had entered Earth's orbit just hours ago, and now every military organization on the planet was in a state of controlled panic. News broadcasts were careful to remain calm, but Amanda could see the fear in the eyes of the officers moving through the station corridors. She stood with her hands pressed against the cold glass, watching the ship that hovered above their world like a dark promise. It was beautiful in a way that made her chest hurt. The vessel's hull seemed to absorb light, creating an effect that made it appear as though a hole had been torn in the fabric of space itself. According to the scanners, the ship was nearly 3 miles long, and yet it moved with a grace that suggested consciousness and intention rather than mere mechanical function. Amanda had spent 20 years studying alien contact protocols, reading every theoretical paper and fictional account of first contact that existed. She had memorized the guidelines, the procedures, the psychological profiles of the types of beings humanity might encounter. But none of that prepared her for the reality of seeing something so utterly alien actually exist in the space above her world. The communication had been simple and direct. The being inside the ship wished to speak with a human female of rank and authority, alone. The governments of Earth had debated for 3 hours about whether to agree to these terms. Amanda had argued passionately in favor of acceptance. If an alien civilization wanted to destroy humanity, they would not ask for dialogue first. They would simply attack. The fact that this being was following some code of conduct, some protocol of communication, suggested intelligence operating within a framework of ethics. That was the most hopeful sign humanity could receive. Her commanding officer, General Martin Cole, had finally agreed with her assessment, though his hands had trembled slightly when he gave the order. Now Amanda waited in the docking bay, dressed in her formal captain's uniform, every nerve in her body screaming with anticipation and fear. The airlock door gleamed under the harsh station lights. She had positioned herself carefully, standing in the center of the bay with nothing between her and the airlock. No barriers, no weapons visible, just a human woman alone waiting to meet an alien. The rumble of the airlock beginning to open echoed through the bay, and Amanda's heart began to beat faster. She forced herself to breathe slowly and deeply the way she had been trained. Whatever emerged from that airlock would be the first non-human intelligence to set foot on human station. The irony was not lost on her that it would not even technically be setting foot, not with whatever anatomy this creature possessed. The light from inside the airlock was strange, a combination of colors that human eyes were not accustomed to perceiving. Amanda felt a moment of vertigo as her brain struggled to process what she was seeing, and then the figure emerged. Zaranel was larger than Amanda had expected from the sensor readings. She seemed to fill the entire airlock with her presence, and for a moment Amanda wondered if she had made a terrible mistake by agreeing to this meeting alone. The alien woman was unlike anything in humanity's collective experience. Her skin shimmered with living patterns of light, shifting from deep purple to electric blue to silver and back again. She had 4 arms, each one moving with a grace and precision that suggested both strength and control. Her face was angular and beautiful in an utterly alien way, with large eyes that reflected the station's lights like faceted gemstones. When she moved, there was a quality of liquid motion, as though she was not entirely bound by the same physics that governed human movement. For several long seconds, neither being moved. They simply studied each other across the distance of the docking bay. Amanda found herself cataloging details, storing information in her mind the way she had been trained to do. The alien's garments seemed to be made of a material that was not quite cloth and not quite something else. Shifting colors in response to what Amanda sensed were emotional fluctuations. Zaranel's eyes moved across Amanda's face, and the captain had the strange sensation of being read like a book. Every secret, every fear, every hope she had ever harbored seemed to be exposed to that alien gaze. Then Zaranel moved, and Amanda's hand instinctively moved toward the communication device at her hip. Though she forced herself to stop the motion, the alien walked forward with a motion that was almost predatory, each step placing her massive feet with careful precision on the station floor. Amanda could hear the faint hum that seemed to accompany Zaranel's presence, a sound that came from somewhere deep within her body. When the alien woman was only a few feet away, she stopped. Up close, Amanda could see details that the distance had hidden. There were scars on Zaranel's arms, marks that suggested battles and struggle, There was something sad about the way the alien held herself, despite her obvious physical power. "Welcome to the human species," Amanda heard herself saying, her voice steady despite the trembling in her limbs. "I am Captain Amanda Harris." The alien's response came not as sound but as something else, a vibration that Amanda felt in her bones rather than heard with her ears. Yet when Zaranel's mouth moved, the words came through clearly, translated by some technology Amanda did not understand. "I am Zaranel of the Velarthi. I have come because your species is the only one that might understand what I am about to tell you. You are young. You are fragile in many ways, but you have something the great civilizations have lost." Amanda felt her training kick in. "Come," she said, gesturing toward the corridor that led deeper into the station. "Let us talk privately." Zaranel followed, and as she moved through the corridors of Station 7, crew members pressed themselves against the walls, eyes wide with wonder and fear. Amanda led the alien to the secure conference room that had been prepared earlier, a space designed to accommodate beings of various sizes and physiologies. The table was simple and functional, and chairs lined one wall. Amanda watched as Zaranel surveyed the room with what appeared to be careful assessment. The alien lowered herself into one of the larger chairs, and the furniture seemed to shift and adapt to accommodate her unusual anatomy. Amanda took her seat opposite, her mind racing with questions and possibilities. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence stretched between them, filled with the weight of history and the future. Then Zaranel began to tell her story, and Amanda listened as the alien woman revealed truths that would change everything Amanda thought she knew about the universe and about the nature of consciousness itself. Zaranel's voice carried weight and meaning that seemed to come from depths of time and experience that Amanda could barely comprehend. The alien woman sat perfectly still, her bioluminescent patterns shifting slowly from purple to a soft blue as she spoke. "My people have existed for longer than your species has had language," Zaranel began. "We were born on a world that died millions of your years ago. We learned to travel through the stars when humanity was still learning to make fire. We built empires that stretched across galaxies. We created technologies that would seem like magic to your scientists. And yet, despite all of this advancement and power, we are dying." Amanda leaned forward slightly, her training overriding her initial fear. "Dying how?" she asked. "Your species seems perfectly healthy from a biological standpoint. The scanning data shows no signs of disease or genetic degradation." Zaranel's patterns shifted to a deeper blue, what Amanda was beginning to recognize as a sign of sadness or pain. "You are correct," the alien woman said. "Our bodies are strong and our science is advanced beyond your understanding. But strength of body does not equal strength of spirit. For thousands of generations, my people have pursued perfection through control. We eliminated emotion because we believed it made us weak. We created a society where duty and efficiency were the only values that mattered. Warriors like myself were bred specifically to be instruments of power, without wants or desires beyond the fulfillment of our obligations." Amanda felt something shift in her understanding. "You are saying that your civilization sacrificed its humanity in order to achieve power," she said slowly. Zaranel's forearms made a gesture that might have been agreement or might have been something else. "Humanity is not a concept limited to your species alone," the alien responded. "It is a way of being, a way of connecting with existence that transcends biological form. My people sacrificed what you might call our humanity long ago, and in doing so we gained the stars but lost everything worth gaining them for. For 40,000 of your years I served my civilization faithfully. I commanded fleets that conquered 17 worlds. I made tactical decisions that affected the lives of billions. I was celebrated as a great warrior, and honored in ways that would have seemed impossible to achieve. And I felt nothing, absolutely nothing. Every victory was hollow. Every conquest felt empty. I was a machine, efficient and perfect and utterly, completely alone in a way that no being should ever have to experience." Amanda found herself reaching out toward Zaranel, though she stopped short of actually touching the alien. "What changed?" she asked gently. Zaranel's patterns flickered and swirled, creating a hypnotic effect. "A mission took me to a small world that orbited a red star in the outer reaches of settled space. The planet was primitive, barely past the stage of developing basic agriculture. My orders were to assess the world for resource extraction, and to evaluate whether the native population possessed any potential threat to Velarthi interests. I landed alone, as was my custom, moving through the alien settlements to observe their behaviors and gather data. That was when I encountered her, Amanda found her breath catching slightly. The alien spoke about this being, this encounter, with a quality of longing that transcended the mere recitation of facts. She was small, barely 2.5 of your feet in height. Her skin was a warm golden color, and her eyes held something that I had never encountered before in any being I had ever met. They held joy, not the manufactured contentment of a perfectly functioning system, but genuine, unforced joy in the simple act of existing. She was tending to growing things, cultivating plants for food and shelter. When she saw me emerge from the tree cover, her initial reaction was fear. That was natural and expected. But then something remarkable happened. The fear faded and she smiled. She smiled at me as though I was not a being capable of destroying her entire civilization with a single command. As though I was not a creature that had already decided her world was suitable for conquest. She smiled as though I was simply another being, worthy of recognition and kindness. I did not understand her reaction. It violated every protocol I had been taught. Yet I found myself unable to leave. I sat with her and she shared her food with me. She asked me questions about myself, about where I came from and what drove me to travel through the stars. She told me stories about her people and their struggles and their dreams. She taught me in the space of a few hours what centuries of education had failed to convey. She taught me that connection was possible. That understanding could exist between beings who were separated by every conceivable difference. That kindness was not weakness. Zaranel paused and Amanda could see the patterns on her skin shifting rapidly, cycling through colors that seemed to express emotions too complex for human language to capture. When my superiors discovered our interaction, they identified her as a contamination threat. They said that she was deliberately attempting to weaken me through exposure to primitive emotional stimulation. They ordered her immediate termination. The order came through the communication system while I was still sitting beside her. She saw my reaction, I think. She understood what the message meant. And I did nothing. I had the power to stop them. I could have destroyed the ship sent to carry out the execution. I could have protected her. I could have refused the order and suffered the consequences. But I did not. I was too afraid, too conditioned by millennia of obedience to protocols and duty. I watched as they took her away, and I felt something break inside me. For the first time in 40,000 years, I felt genuine emotion. I felt grief. I felt rage. I felt the burning shame of my own cowardice. I returned to my duties. I filed my report. I recommended that the world be harvested for its resources, and then I spent the next 1,000 years searching for beings like her, searching for species that had not yet lost their capacity to feel. Amanda realized that tears were streaming down her own face. She did not remember starting to cry. "You came here looking for hope," she whispered. Zaranel's patterns shifted to a soft, luminous gold. "I came here looking for redemption," the alien corrected gently. "But perhaps those are the same thing." Amanda sat in silence for what felt like hours, though she knew it was only minutes. Her mind struggled to process what Zaranel had just shared. A civilization thousands of generations old, an ancient warrior carrying the weight of millennia of regret, and a journey across the stars that had ultimately led to this moment, this conversation, this meeting between two species who should have remained forever separated by the vast gulf of space. "How many worlds have you visited in your search?" Amanda asked finally. Zaranel's patterns had settled into a steady emerald green, what Amanda was learning to recognize as a state of contemplative calm. "I have encountered 247 civilizations at various stages of development," the alien replied. "Some were already extinct by the time I arrived, their great works reduced to dust and memory. Some were in the process of destroying themselves through internal conflict, and some, a precious few, had managed to preserve what my people call the spark, the quality of consciousness that allows a being to care about something beyond immediate survival and reproduction, the quality that allows art to be created and music to be composed and sacrifice to be made for the sake of another being. I have studied each of these civilizations carefully, trying to understand what allowed them to maintain this spark, while so many others extinguished it. But none of them had quite what I was looking for. None of them possessed the combination of emotional intelligence, adaptability, and untapped potential that might make a genuine difference when the time came. When what time came, Amanda asked, though something in her already knew the answer. Zaranel rose from her chair, her massive frame unfolding with fluid grace. She walked to the viewport that showed Earth below, hanging in the darkness like a blue marble. Her forearms reached toward the glass as though trying to touch the world itself. The Kardesh Collective has noticed your world, Zaranel said quietly. They are a faction within the greater galactic community, one that my people have been in conflict with for several thousand years. Unlike my civilization, which has lost its way in the pursuit of efficiency and control, the Kardesh have chosen a different path. They have made war into an art form. They consume worlds not for resources but for entertainment. They conquer civilizations and enslave the survivors, using them as gladiators in arenas where the strong destroy the weak for the amusement of crowds. Your species would not survive contact with them. Not as you are now. Amanda felt a chill run through her body. How long do we have before they arrive? She asked, keeping her voice steady despite the fear that was rising in her chest. 7 of your years, Zaranel replied. Maybe 8. My calculations could be slightly off, but not by much. In that time, I must teach your people the technologies and strategies that will allow them to resist conquest. But more than that, I must convince your leaders that the path to survival does not lie in abandoning what makes you human. The Kardesh believe that strength comes only from violence and domination. They believe that emotion is weakness and that compassion is a disease to be cured. They have built an empire on these principles, and it is an empire that consumes everything in its path. If humanity takes the path that my people took, if you trade your emotional capacity and your ability to form genuine connections for military advantage, you might survive the Kardesh attack. But you would not truly survive. You would become something like us. You would live on, but the thing that makes life worth living would be gone forever. Amanda turned back to face the alien woman. Why should we trust you, she asked. For all we know, this could be some kind of elaborate trick. The Kardesh could have sent you here to convince us not to prepare, or you could be attempting to manipulate us for reasons we can't even comprehend. Zaranel's patterns shifted to a warm amber, and Amanda realized the alien was expressing something like amusement. These are very reasonable concerns, Zaranel said. In fact, your willingness to question my motives is itself a sign of why I believe humanity might actually be able to survive what is coming. Most civilizations would accept the warnings of an ancient being at face value. But you, even faced with apparent certainty of doom, still insist on maintaining your skepticism and your need for verification. This is good. This is the quality that I was searching for. As for proof of my intentions, I can offer you access to my knowledge. I can provide you with the technical specifications of weapon systems that would take your scientists hundreds of years to develop on their own. I can give you insights into Kardesh tactics and strategy. I can help you build a military infrastructure that will allow you to mount a credible defense. But none of this will mean anything if your people lose sight of what they are defending. You must tell your leaders that the goal is not to become more like the Kardesh. The goal is to remain human while becoming strong enough to protect that humanity. Amanda's mind was already racing ahead to the complications this would create. The governments of Earth were not unified. Different nations would have different interests and different levels of trust regarding an alien benefactor. Some would want to take everything Zaranel offered. Others would reject it entirely and attempt to develop their own defenses. There would be political conflict and military posturing and 1,000 different agendas competing for resources and attention. But beneath all of that, Amanda could see what Zaranel was truly offering. A chance, not a guarantee, but a genuine possibility that humanity could face what was coming without losing itself in the process. I will convey your message to my government, Amanda said slowly, but I can make no guarantees about how they will respond. You understand the nature of human politics, I assume. Zaranel's patterns shifted to a shade of blue that Amanda had come to associate with what might have been laughter. I've studied your species for the past 300 years, Zaranel replied. I am aware that your governments are fractious and frequently irrational. But you have something more important than agreement or unified command. You have the capacity to inspire each other. You have leaders who can articulate visions that make individual humans willing to sacrifice their own interests for the greater good. That is a power that the Kardesh have never understood. It is a power that destroyed several of my people's greatest empires. And it is a power that I believe might be enough to save your world. Amanda looked at the alien woman, seeing for the first time not just the vast differences between their species, but also the profound similarity in their hopes and fears. Very well, she said. Let us return to the communication room. I will need to transmit your offer to Earth, and then we will see if my species is capable of becoming what you believe we can be. The transmission from Station 7 reached Earth just as the sun was setting over the Pacific Ocean. In the underground command center beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Martin Cole received the message directly from Amanda Harris. His face remained carefully neutral as he listened to her report, but his hands clenched into fists on the table before him. The message was clear. Humanity had 7 years to prepare for an invasion by an alien civilization that had conquered hundreds of worlds. They had an ally in the form of an ancient alien warrior who was offering access to advanced technology and military strategy, and they had a choice to make about what kind of people they wanted to be when the danger arrived. Cole immediately convened an emergency session of the Global Council, the unified body that had been established to handle matters of planetary importance. Within 6 hours, the leaders of the world's most powerful nations were gathered in a secure facility, receiving the same briefing that Cole had received. The reactions were predictable. The Russian delegate demanded proof of Zaranel's claims and suggested that this might be an elaborate deception. The Chinese representative immediately began calculating the advantages that advanced alien technology could provide. The American president expressed concern about the long-term implications of accepting help from a being whose motivations they did not fully understand. And throughout it all, Amanda Harris stood in the communication chamber on Station 7, watching the live feed from the council meeting and knowing that the future of her entire species was being decided in real time. She had prepared herself for this moment, but nothing could have truly readied her for the weight of it. Back on Earth, after hours of debate and posturing, a consensus began to form. Humanity would accept Zaranel's offer of technology and knowledge. Military specialists would be dispatched to Station 7 to begin the process of learning from the alien warrior. Scientists and engineers would be given access to information that had been compiled across centuries of observations and research, but careful protocols would be maintained to ensure that Earth's independence was preserved and that no single faction would be able to monopolize the advantages that this new knowledge would provide. It was a compromise which meant that nobody was entirely satisfied, but it was a compromise that allowed humanity to move forward. Within days, the first contingent of Earth's military specialists arrived at Station 7. They were a diverse group drawn from every major nation and military tradition. There were generals and engineers, tacticians and scientists, all of them carrying the weight of expectation from their home governments. Amanda served as the primary liaison, working to facilitate communication between Zaranel and the human delegation. She spent long hours in the alien warrior's presence, and over time something unexpected began to develop. It was not quite friendship, not in the way humans typically understood that concept, but it was a connection that transcended the normal professional relationships that might develop between military colleagues. Zaranel began to share not just military information, but insights into her own species and her own journey. Amanda found herself opening up in ways that surprised her, talking about her own past and her own reasons for dedicating her life to the pursuit of first contact with alien life. One evening, as they reviewed combat strategy files on the observation deck, Zaranel turned to Amanda and asked a question that caught her completely off guard. "What is your greatest fear?" the alien asked. "Not fear of the Kardesh or fear of failure in your military preparations. What is the most fundamental fear that drives your existence?" Amanda was silent for a long time. She had been trained to present a composed exterior, to show strength in the face of uncertainty. But there was something about Zaranel's presence that made pretense impossible. "My greatest fear," Amanda said finally, "is that we will win this war by becoming exactly like the Kardesh, that we will sacrifice our humanity in order to survive, only to discover that survival without meaning is not worth the cost." Zaranel's bioluminescent patterns shifted to that warm amber color that Amanda had come to recognize as an expression of profound understanding. "Then we must ensure that does not happen," the alien said. Amanda felt a surge of emotion that she could not quite name. It was part gratitude and part something deeper, something that transcended species and biology and all the vast gulfs that separated them. Over the following months, the partnership between human and alien bore remarkable fruit. Engineers working with Zaranel managed to develop new weapon systems that incorporated alien technology in ways that enhanced rather than replaced human innovation. Strategists learned tactics that had been perfected across thousands of years of warfare, but they applied those tactics in ways that reflected human values of minimizing casualties and protecting civilian populations. The military forces of Earth began to transform, becoming something new and unprecedented. They became stronger without becoming cold. They became more efficient without losing their connection to why they were fighting in the first place. But as the preparations advanced, Amanda began to notice something disturbing. Not all of humanity's leaders were embracing the path that Zaranel had suggested. Some military factions, particularly in certain nations, were pushing for a more aggressive interpretation of the aliens' teachings. They wanted to transform humanity into something harder and colder, something more purely martial, and less constrained by what they viewed as sentimental concerns about civilian welfare and ethical considerations. These factions began to gain influence, particularly in resource-rich nations that felt they could afford to take more militaristic stances. Amanda found herself caught between her duty to Earth and her growing concerns about the direction some portions of Earth's leadership were taking. She expressed her concerns to Zaranel, who listened with the patience and wisdom that had come from thousands of years of experience. "The path you are on is a knife's edge," the alien told her. "Some of your people will want to walk toward strength and compassion. Others will want to abandon compassion in pursuit of strength. Your job is not to force all of humanity into a single choice, but to ensure that the choice remains available to those who wish to preserve both their power and their humanity." As the years moved forward and the date of the Kardesh arrival drew nearer, Amanda realized that Zaranel had given her more than just military knowledge. The alien had given her a role to play that transcended military command. Amanda was becoming a symbol of what humanity could be, a living representation of the possibility that strength and compassion could coexist in the same heart and the same civilization. 6 years had passed since Zaranel first arrived at Station 7, and the transformation of human civilization had been both remarkable and troubling. The planet below hummed with activity as military installations were expanded and new technologies were integrated into every level of society. Factories that had once produced consumer goods now manufactured advanced weapon systems. Schools that had taught conventional sciences now educated specialists in alien technology. The world was changing in ways both wonderful and concerning. Amanda sat in her personal quarters on the station, looking at reports that had come in from the Earth below. The nations of the world had largely united under the banner of planetary defense, but cracks were beginning to show in that unity. Military factions in 3 different countries were pushing aggressively for research into technologies that Zaranel had explicitly warned against. Methods of enhancement that would elevate human soldiers to something no longer entirely human. Some governments were considering these proposals seriously. Amanda had tried to warn them, but the voice of caution seemed increasingly drowned out by voices calling for absolute security through any means necessary. She was troubled by this development in ways she could not fully articulate. Zaranel seemed to sense her distress. The alien had become increasingly adept at reading human emotional states, and she often sought out Amanda's company in the evening hours when the station was quieter. This night was no exception. Amanda heard the familiar humming that preceded Zaranel's arrival and looked up from her reports just as the alien woman entered her quarters. The patterns on Zaranel's skin were flickering in what appeared to be a color associated with concern. "You are worried about what some of your leaders are planning," the alien stated rather than asked. Amanda set down her datapad and gestured for Zaranel to sit. "I am terrified," Amanda admitted. "We are on the verge of becoming exactly what you warned us against. Some of our people are treating your knowledge as a path to transcendence rather than as a tool to be used wisely. They want to remake humanity in the image of your civilization, stripping away emotion and individuality in pursuit of perfect military efficiency." Zaranel settled her massive frame into the chair that had been specially modified to accommodate her anatomy. "This outcome was always a possibility," the alien said quietly. "I have seen it happen many times before. When a civilization faces an existential threat, the impulse is often to eliminate anything that seems like a weakness, and for those whose thinking is limited, emotion will always seem like weakness." Amanda rose from her seat and paced to the window. She stared out at the stars, the same stars that Zaranel had traveled through for thousands of years. "But we are supposed to be different," Amanda said. "We are supposed to be the civilization that holds on to its humanity, even in the face of the greatest possible danger. That is why you chose us. That is what makes us worth saving." Zaranel's patterns shifted to a soft blue, expressing what Amanda had come to recognize as deep sadness. "I chose humanity because I saw potential in you," the alien replied. "But I chose specifically you, Amanda, because I recognized in you something that I had lost so long ago. I recognized the capacity to hold 2 seemingly contradictory truths in the same heart. the ability to be both strong and compassionate, both capable of terrible force and unwilling to use that force unnecessarily. I thought that if you could survive this trial and maintain that balance, then perhaps you could teach my entire civilization how to reclaim what we lost. Amanda turned back to face Zaranel, and she saw something in the alien's expression that made her heart break. Zaranel had been so focused on helping humanity prepare that she had not spoken in years about her own needs and her own journey. Amanda crossed the room, and in a gesture that defied protocol and training, she reached out and placed her hand on one of Zaranel's upper arms. "What about you?" she asked. "What happens to you when the Kardesh arrive? Will you fight with us?" Zaranel's pattern swirled with colors that seemed to express emotions too complex for human language to describe. "When the Kardesh arrive, I will likely be declared a traitor to the Velarthi Collective," the alien said. "My people have already begun to question why I am helping a primitive species prepare for war, rather than using that knowledge to strengthen our own position. There are those among the Velarthi leadership who see my actions as a betrayal of our kind. If I take up arms against the Kardesh alongside human forces, I will be burned from the records of my civilization. Everything I have achieved across 40,000 years will be erased. I will be remembered only as a traitor." Amanda felt tears beginning to flow down her cheeks. "Then we will face this together," she said fiercely. "And when this is over, when the Kardesh are defeated, the story that will be told will not be about your betrayal. It will be about the ancient warrior who chose compassion over duty, who chose hope over safety. It will be about the being who taught an entire species how to be strong without losing its soul." Zaranel's patterns burst into brilliant gold, a color that Amanda had learned to associate with something deeper than happiness. It was the color of redemption, of second chances, of finding meaning in a life that had seemed empty for thousands of years. The alien's voice, when she spoke, carried within it an emotion that seemed to transcend the boundaries of species. "Then that is enough," Zaranel said. "That is more than enough." The two beings stood together in that moment, a human woman and an alien warrior, separated by biology and evolution and millions of years of different histories, yet connected by something that transcended all of those differences. They were connected by the choice to hope, by the choice to believe that strength and compassion could coexist, by the choice to fight not to eliminate the other, but to preserve what made each of them worth saving. Outside the station, the stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, and somewhere in that vast darkness, the Kardesh Collective continued their inexorable approach. But inside Station 7, something new was being forged. An alliance that had started as a military partnership had become something far more significant. It had become a covenant between two species who had chosen to preserve their souls even in the face of the greatest possible challenge. The 6 months remaining before the Kardesh arrived would test that covenant in ways neither species could fully anticipate. But as Amanda looked into Zaranel's multifaceted eyes, she felt a certainty that transcended logic or probability. They would face what was coming together, and they would prevail not because they were the strongest or the most advanced, but because they had chosen to remain true to what made them worth fighting for. The future was uncertain, but it was no longer terrifying, because they would face it together.